Hey guys, so this video is a little different from my normal videos in that it's about something that hasn't necessarily been tested or verified or if we're even sure that it's true. It's a complete theory, but it's a theory that's been circulating in the community for a while now. As everyone knows, the ultimate goal in Black Desert is to enhance all your gear to pen and become an unstoppable killing machine, rampaging through the battlefields, killing all the other unstoppable killing machines that do not have full pen. Now, the only thing stopping people from achieving this goal is the sheer level of difficulty in getting even a single piece of pen gear. Pen is literally the penultimate enchantment. You cannot go above pen. Plus 20, or pen, is the highest you can get, and as such, the difficulty in getting pen is almost disproportionately difficult to the amount of work that needs to be put into getting a pen item. Most players will go their entire Black Desert career without getting a single pen item. In fact, most players will go their entire career without even being part of a guild, I would say, that has members that have pen items in it. Pen items are that rare in Black Desert. So, everyone knows that pen is difficult to get. Even just getting to 10 is fairly difficult for most players. But some people, over the past few months, have been postulating the theory that perhaps Kakao is purposefully limiting the number of successful pens that we are able to get on each server. So what this means is pen isn't just difficult to get because there's a 3 or 5% chance of success when you're trying to go from 10 to pen, but Kakao is actually actively interfering, or possibly Pearl Abyss, actively interfering with the amount of pen successes that we see. So the most popular theory is that within a given time frame, for example, say a week, there is a certain number of pen successes that can occur. Now these numbers are totally made up, but for example, if in a week 10 pen attempts were able to be successful per server, then that means after the 10th successful pen on that server, no more people could get pen. And for a while, there's been absolutely no data to back up this theory. Humans are notoriously terrible at discerning the difference between RNG and people tampering with RNG. We suck at figuring out what proper distribution and what random distribution look like. And things such as the idea that certain times are more likely to give people tets or successful enchantments. For example, when you're in chat and all of a sudden you see a slew of people get a bunch of successful enchantments in a row. None of that's verifiable. That could all be totally random. But recently, something was released that kind of furthers this argument about Kakao limiting the number of pens. And that is this that we're staring at. This is the infographic for the 2nd anniversary of Black Desert on the NA and EU servers that Kakao released. There are a number of cool milestones on here, such as the population for each server, almost 3.9 million for NA, about 3.27 for EU, total number of years played, although I'd posit to guess that most of these are AFK. Despite being behind in both population and time played, EU has completed more quests somehow. They've got similar death totals. EU has better workers. NA has more pets, more horses. But what we really care about here are these two right here. The total number of T9 horses, so unicorns and Pegasus, and the total number of pen successes. So right off the bat, you can see one very obvious thing. Both of them are within one number of each other. 105, 106, 630, 629. None of the other numbers on this page, which are all numbers that are within the player's control, players can control how many fish they catch, how many boats they have, how many horses they buy, how many pets they buy. Players control all of this stuff, as well as stuff like the best anglers, class distribution. This is all player controlled. However, the one thing that is RNG and obeys the game system is the one thing that sticks out like a sore thumb as being pretty much equal on both servers. Like, it's off by 1. That is not what you'd expect, given that for the most part, EU is behind because they have a smaller population of players than North America does. You would expect that North America, unless EU had some massive drive because EU has all the people that love making horses, and EU had some massive drive to get coursers and turn them into T9 horses, you would expect North America to have a slight edge in horses, T9 horses. You would expect them to have pretty much a similar edge to what they have in the total number of horses. Maybe a bit less. It would be better if we could see the total number of coursers or total number of tier 8 horses, but you'd expect a somewhat related number, probably about 110 to 100, just looking at the numbers. But you would not expect 105 to 106. Same with pen. You would not expect, with the population of characters on both servers, with the number of hours played, you would not expect that the number of successful pen attempts on both servers would be pretty much identical. You would expect them to be, well, there'd be a difference. You'd expect more pens to exist on North America, as the North Americans are more active and have more players, or you would expect there to be less pen attempts on EU because the North Americans generally just have more stuff. But in the end, that's not the case. In the end, they're both the same. Well, pretty much. I mean, I'm not really going to say that this one-off makes them different. I would say that that's pretty much the same for these two. With the horses, it's a bit less clear because there's less, 105 and 106. There's a small enough sample size that it could be RNG, that NA's only succeeded 105 times, NEU succeeded 106 times with a difference of 1 between the two. But with pen attempts, there's a lot more. We've been trying for a lot longer, and it's a lot fishier that these pen attempts are the same. So what does this really mean? Pretty much, if Kakao is tampering with these numbers, if they are tampering the number of successful pen attempts, and if they're doing that, they're likely tampering with the number of TET attempts as well. They probably don't bother to try, although they might, but there is probably some form of system in place, provided that the theory of them controlling the pen attempts is true. There's probably some form of system in place for all high-level endgame content. Total number of T9 horses, pens, most likely TETs, high-level accessories, probably accessory drops. There is probably controls in place in the game to kind of manage this. And that is an interesting thought. It's not necessarily a bad thing to limit the amount of high power items in the game. The problem is that Black Desert doesn't have a trading system, which means that limiting the number of high power endgame items is something that you'd expect more from a game such as Path of Exile, where a high level endgame item such as a league specific unique with very powerful game-changing effects isn't something they want in the hands of all players. They want to limit the number of players that have it, and they want to make it exclusive. And that gives the item value beyond just bragging rights, because the item's value is tied both to its power and its scarcity. There is an infinitely higher demand than there is supply for the item, and as such the item's price skyrockets. That doesn't exist in Black Desert. Yes, there is a price for pen items. It's, I believe, 4.5 billion silver if you put it on the marketplace. But with how difficult it is to get a pen, 4.5 billion silver seems very, very low. A TET is worth, I want to say 1.2 billion silver, 1.1 billion silver on the marketplace. And you only have approximately a 5% chance of succeeding in a TET, most likely lower. With all the number of pen attempts we see every day in Black Desert on both NA and EU, you would expect there to be, if there truly was a 5% chance, you would probably expect there to be a much higher, or if not at least a decently higher, number of pens on both servers, if it was actually a 5% chance, which leads me to believe it's not actually a 5% chance. But that's going back to humans suck at figuring RNG, so we'll kind of ignore that point, because the number of pen attempts is still very low across the entire game. But it's true that Black Desert limiting pens like this, the only sensible reason I can think of for it would be to give players a goal to keep chasing. If players, especially because Black Desert originated in Korea, and the Korean form of Black Desert is much more pay to win than North America. You cannot buy gear from the cash shop, which is what a lot of people will tell me pay to win means, but you can buy lots of items from the cash shop to make enhancing gear much easier, much faster, and get your fail stacks up much higher. So in Korea, because they know that there will be super whales that will try for full pen, and there are super whales that are trying for full pen in Korea, limiting the number of pens means that these whales won't quit the game once they've got full pen, have stomped around and killed everyone for a while, and get bored of the game. Once you get full pen, there is literally nothing else in the game for you to really do. You could try for T9 horses, you could try for a unicorn and a pegasus if you're inclined to do so. You could try to level up life skills and become number 1 for those, but that's really just a matter of AFKing more, as most life skills are not things you can actively do, with the exception of gathering, maybe farming, but cooking, processing, fishing, these are all the main 3 life skills people think of, apart from gathering. These are all pretty much just AFK your life away, and whoever's AFK'd more will have the higher level. You could try for the highest level in the game, but that takes an insane amount of time. In fact, if we scroll down here, you can see the highest amount of experience. And there's actually a pretty huge difference in between the top players. Number 3 on both servers are actually pretty similar, 1.539 billion, 1.568 billion. And then you go up another 250 million to the number 2s. And on NA, you go up another 200 million to number 1. And on EU, you go up almost 400 million. Not almost, you go up over 400 million experience to the number 1 position. So going for number 1 in experience is, even to Asian grinding standards, a thankless and soul-sucking experience. Especially because grinding, one of the biggest benefits of grinding is you're getting a ton of silver. And if you got full pen, what do you need the silver for? You've already got full pen. You've won the game. There's nothing else. So I suppose it would make sense for them to try and limit it for that. But if they are doing this, and if players can somehow prove it, and players are a lot more wily than people think that we are. Players, for example, Blue, who discovered the hidden stats, have a tendency to look into game files, have a tendency to discover things that the developers try to keep hidden. And if they are discovered to be doing this, there would most likely be a huge loss of confidence in Kakao. Now, on the one hand, I say this because that would be my natural reaction, to be rather annoyed at them for fixing the rates. On the other hand, I've thought this about them many times over the past 2 years as I've played Black Desert, and each time players have proved me wrong and kept coming back to Black Desert, so I could be wrong about that. But I really do feel like messing with the enhancement system, which is one of the main draws and drawbacks to the game, especially for messing with the enhancement system for their highest level players, the most dedicated people in the game. People that go for pen attempts are not casuals. No one that goes for a pen attempt seriously is a casual. If you're going for pen attempt, it's because you have Tet gear, and we're not talking about green gear either. We're talking boss gear. In fact, this, I believe, includes green gear, which makes it even less impressive, green and blue gear. Because green gear, I want to say, has a 20% chance of success going to pen, whereas boss gear has a much lower chance of success. But if they're messing with these chances, and they're messing with the most dedicated players, these players are the ones who defend them when we're talking about pay-to-win arguments. These are the players that stick around through the thick and thin because they love the game. These are the players that play the game every day, that leave their computers on overnight to AFK, that grind, that hit level 61, that have characters at or going for level 62. These are the dedicated players. And if they're messing with these players' pen attempts, the things these players spend the most time in the game going for, that could actually drive players away. So, in the end, I'm not going to say there's no real proof, because I would say that this is a pretty big... it's not proof, obviously, but it's really, really fishy. It's not a smoking gun, but it is certainly bloodstains on the main antagonist's shirt that you're looking at suspiciously in the opening scene of Law and Order as they tearfully... I haven't watched Law and Order in years. Tearfully confess to not committing the crime? Alright, that's a terrible analogy. Just ignore that metaphor. But, really, if they're doing this, there's no proof, but these numbers do not reflect well on them, and if they're doing this, that does not reflect well on Kakao or Pearl Abyss, because there's no guarantees Kakao. Kakao has complained multiple times to the players that they have no power in the game, as all they're allowed to do really is publish it and do some basic GM stuff. Pearl Abyss is the one that pushes updates. Pearl Abyss is the one that manages game functions and game systems. So it could be Kakao is totally innocent and Pearl Abyss is behind this. It could be Kakao is the one behind this, Pearl Abyss is totally innocent. Either way, it does not reflect well on either company if this is actually happening. But do keep in mind, it might not be happening. It could be that this is just a total scary coincidence, and somehow NA and EU, despite the differences in player population, in wealth, and in just general player levels, that somehow they both have pretty much exactly the same number of successes for pen attempts and T9 horses. Anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. I know it's not my normal type of video, but it was one that I've been talking to a few people about this over the past few days, and I thought that it might be an interesting video to make. Subscribe if you liked it, and have a good one.